Breaking tonight, just 48 hours until the third and final presidential debate, and both campaigns are dealing with major new controversies. Welcome to the Kelly File, everyone. I'm Megyn Kelly. Developing on the campaign trail tonight, there are new complaints about a rigged election, new accusations against Donald Trump. His wife steps forward to defend his behavior, and there are new bombshells from WikiLeaks. Let's begin tonight with the Clinton campaign and stunning reports that say one of her top State Department lieutenants tried to make a deal with the FBI in the middle of its investigation into her email scandal. Now, that lieutenant is Patrick Kennedy, and if his name sounds familiar, it should. This guy was neck deep in the Benghazi controversy, and his fingerprints were all over her email scandal from the very start. The details on Kennedy's attempt to reach a deal comes directly from the FBI's own files. Now, keep in mind, this guy was working for you. He was supposed to be working for you at the State Department in dealing with the FBI that was investigating Clinton in the email. The FBI's own files, and this was the lead issue that was discussed in an exclusive interview that Fox's Carl Cameron just landed with Donald Trump, where he asked him about an FBI note that certainly makes it sound like Patrick Kennedy cared more about protecting Hillary Clinton than protecting you. Watch.
What's illegal? I mean, what's taking place is illegal between Justice Department and the FBI and Secretary of State and the State Department. I think it's crazy what's going on. It's totally illegal. It's a criminal act. It's a crime. And I hear the Republicans are going to hold hearings after the election. Why would you hold them after the election? You want to hold those hearings before the election. But this is a criminal act, and it's incredible that they can do this and get away with it.
In moments, Judge Andrew Napolitano will tell us if Donald Trump is right, whether a crime has been committed here. But we begin tonight with our chief intelligence correspondent, Catherine Herridge, who's going to set this up for you so we all understand it. Catherine?
Well, thank you, Megyn. These FBI records released today state in black and white that one of Secretary Clinton's most trusted lieutenants, Patrick Kennedy, wanted a backroom deal with the FBI over the classification of Clinton's emails. A leading Republican says tonight it's evidence of a broad conspiracy.
I think it's corruption. I think it's manipulation. I think it's against the law, and it certainly goes to the intent. Somebody should have been prosecuted for this.
According to the FBI interviews known as 302s, Kennedy wanted to do a swap. The FBI would downgrade a highly sensitive Clinton email to unclassified, and in return, the Bureau would get coveted slots for agents overseas. An FBI agent's name was cut from the records posted online today that read in part, quote, "Redacted believes state has an agenda, which involves minimizing the classified nature of the Clinton emails in order to protect state interests and those of Clinton." The FBI agent specifically uses the term quid pro quo. This is no small thing.
I understand that.
Senior executive
I understand
accused
that.
of trying to
I understand that,
bribe
which is
an
why I
agent.
came out here and said there's no quid pro quo. Absolutely not.
Happened. Both the FBI and State Department emphasized to reporters today the email's classification was never changed, and the FBI never got additional slots for its agents overseas. But legal experts say even the discussion of a backroom deal potentially violates federal law. Megyn.
Catherine, thank you.
You're welcome.
Joining us now, Judge Andrew Napolitano, Fox News senior judicial analyst. Well, this stinks to high heaven, and we don't have to look far to figure out whether at least the person on the receiving end of the proposed deal thought it was a quid pro quo, because it's in the FBI agent's notes.
Right. So an FBI agent who was in charge of handling documents that had been accumulated in the Clinton investigation was approached by Patrick Kennedy. Mrs. Clinton is not the Secretary of State at this point. Patrick Kennedy's working for Secretary Kerry, and he makes the offer that Catherine Herridge just described for us. Can you change the marking on this document? Now,
he was working for us.
Correct.
When he's doing that. He doesn't answer to Hillary Clinton anymore.
Correct.
He's supposed to be looking out for us.
Markings on documents are changed all the time. They're changed so that people at a lower level of security clearance can read documents that they otherwise wouldn't be able to read because they need to see what's in there. But they are never, ever, ever lawfully changed after they've been subpoenaed and when they've been accumulated as evidence in a criminal investigation. And it was under that circumstance that Patrick Kennedy asked this FBI agent, whose name we haven't been given, but who obviously reported it to his bosses, to make those changes, which, of course, he refused to make.
And let's say Patrick Kennedy, who is, again, he is neck deep in Benghazi. I mean, the blame was there was plenty to go around when it came to how that hit was handled, the absence of security, despite the begging of Ambassador Chris Stevens and others. But Patrick Kennedy was right in the mix of it and was not blameless. So he pops up again. And it'd be one thing if he saw a document, Judge, that he said this is legitimately problematic and we shouldn't be producing this, and so it needs to go into a basement and never to be seen again. But if that were true, he wouldn't have to be offering the FBI all these carrots to get them to agree to his little proposal.
The offering of the carrot, as you put it, even though it was not accepted by the FBI, is an attempt to commit bribery. The FBI didn't see it that way. They didn't charge him with anything, either because they felt they couldn't prove the case, or maybe the FBI was in the tank for Mrs. Clinton and all of her people from day one of these investigations.
No, that's not easy to believe.
It's very, very difficult to believe. I agree with you. But the evidence is there in the FBI document, which came out over the weekend. He offered me something of value, not to me personally, but to the FBI, if we would alter evidence. So that's an effort to bribe, to deface evidence, to obstruct justice. Was anybody charged with any of those crimes? No.
And the advantage to him in having the FBI classify this document from what it was to something else was that it would get buried, that the FBI wouldn't have to have it, it wouldn't have to get produced publicly, no one would ever have to see it.
Correct. And his former boss and still dear friend, Secretary Clinton, could not be blamed for exposing a national security secret, which, of course, she's done hundreds of times.
Judge, good to see you.
Likewise.
So the Clinton campaign is also dealing with new fallout from leaked emails, including one that shows their immediate, unvarnished reaction to a national tragedy. It came immediately after the December 2015 San Bernardino terrorist attack, when two Muslim extremists opened fire on a holiday party, killing 22 people and injuring many more. Chief National Correspondent Ed Henry is live in Washington tonight with more. Ed?
Good evening, Megan. Julian Assange says the Ecuador government cut off his internet access, but WikiLeaks at this hour is now back up and running and just dumped out about another 3,000 emails. One that is pretty fascinating, you mentioned, from last December after the San Bernardino massacre, leaving 14 people dead. John Podesta, the campaign chairman for Hillary Clinton, sent an email suggesting it might be better for the campaign in terms of its narrative if a non-Muslim had led the terror attack. After Clinton aide noted that MSNBC host Christopher Hayes had tweeted the name of the suspect and that it was Saeed Farouk, damn, wrote campaign staffer Karen Finney, who is now the spokeswoman for VP nominee Tim Kaine. Podesta responded, quote, better if a guy named Saeed Farouk was reporting that a guy named Christopher Hayes was the shooter. Meanwhile, in the battle against ISIS, Clinton herself sent Podesta a shocking email taking aim at two U.S. allies. Clinton writing to Podesta in 2014, the government in the United States needed to, quote, bring pressure on the governments of Qatar and Saudi Arabia, which are providing clandestine financial and logistic support to ISIL and other radical Sunni groups in the region. Yet when it comes to Qatar, the WikiLeaks document dumps also show 2 years earlier, Bill Clinton had no trouble accepting big money from that same country for the Clinton Foundation. Emails showing that officials from Qatar, quote, would like to see WJC, using his initials, of course, for just 5 minutes in New York City to present $1 million check that Qatar promised for the former president's birthday in 2011. When questions were later raised about the $1 million and whether it was appropriate, top campaign aides emailed each other, said no big deal, take the money. Megan?
Ed, thank you. Joining us now, Matt Bennett, a former deputy assistant to President Bill Clinton, and Pete Hoekstra, Trump campaign national security advisor and a former congressman. Great to see you both. So let me start with you on this, Congressman. The notion that this was problematic in the Clinton camp, that this man who committed this horrendous act of terror was Muslim, and it would have been far preferable if the man had been white, says what about Team Clinton in your view?
Well, it says a couple of things. Number one, it's always about the spin. In San Bernardino, they had to control the spin because the Clinton narrative was always, we don't have to worry about the threat from radical Islam. They did the same thing in Benghazi when they said the attack was a result of a demonstration when it was really because there was an attack. They also said it was America's fault because there was a video. In reality, it happened because they hated us. So it's always about getting the spin right time after time and time. It is political corruption because everything is about getting to the vote and winning the vote and never solving the problem.
Matt, what is wrong with that? Because you can see a lot of people not understanding why it was so problematic in their view that the killer happened to be a radical Islamist, killer.
Well, first, Megan, let's just remember where this comes from. These were stolen documents, just like in Watergate, where someone broke into the DNC and stole documents. Here, the Russian government stole documents from John Podesta, his personal property.
You're right.
And dumped them out onto the internet with no context whatsoever. So what we're seeing is this one exchange between two Clinton staffers without any context. We don't know if they talked in the hall 2 minutes before this. We don't know anything about the context of this. So for Peter to say that this is clearly political spin is ridiculous. We don't have any idea why John and Karen were having this exchange. They may have been worrying about something else.
But you have to see this as problematic. I mean, it plays right into the narrative that many people already believe about the Clintons and the Obama team, for that matter, which is there's just a complete unwillingness to accept reality, which is that there are radical Muslims, not mainstream Muslims, but there is a faction of Islam that has corrupted the most extreme words that are written in the Quran and elsewhere into a mandate to kill. Why is it so hard to? That's not condemning all of Islam. It's just understanding that sometimes when domestic terror acts are committed, they're committed by radical Islamists.
There's no question that's right, and there's also no question that Secretary Clinton understands that to her bones. I mean, she was involved in every major decision.
Why is her team
so
upset that it's a Muslim committing a terror act as opposed to a white man?
Well, look, I don't know because I don't know the context, but let's just take it. Peter speculated. I'll speculate too. If a white man commits this, unfortunately in this country, there's 33 murders every single day. This would be par for the course. But if this is Muslim terrorism, then there is all kinds of other implications. There could be follow-up violence. It's enormously dangerous to other people as opposed to being would likely be an isolated incident. So there's a lot of reasons that they could have been reacting the way that they did.
That, Congressman Hoekstra, you tell me, that sounds like a very charitable read of what we saw in that Karen Finney email.
It is a very charitable read. And Matt is absolutely right. Hillary Clinton was involved in every major foreign policy and domestic security decision for about 4 years. And she always sided with the radical jihadists. In Egypt, she decided to engage with the Muslim Brotherhood. In Libya, she sided with the radical jihadists to overthrow Gaddafi. In Syria, again, we allied ourselves with the radical jihadists. Today, Iraq, Syria, Yemen, Libya, Afghanistan, they are all failed states. They are all sending massive flows of refugees into Europe. She has consistently been wrong on her strategies to confront, contain, and ultimately defeat radical jihadists. We've gone from 3,000 people killed per year to over 30,000.
We got to leave it at that. Great to see you both.
Thank you.
Thanks, Megan.